Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another fabulous episode of the Healthcare Trailblazers podcast. Excited to be here today with a friend, Saul Marquez. Saul is the CEO of a company called Outcomes Rocket, which is a B2B marketing company in healthcare. Super tough place to be. Really excited to have this conversation because I actually started way back when in marketing in healthcare. And then left it because I had no idea what I was doing. So to sit down with somebody that clearly does know what they're doing should be fun. Saul, thank you so much for joining us today.
Mendel, such a pleasure to be here with you and your audience. Thanks for having me.
I was just mentioning to you, there's a book that I read probably 7 years ago called The New Rules of Marketing and PR by David Meerman Scott. And funny story, actually, he is someone that actually came on the podcast.
Oh, nice.
Actually, yeah, and he's not healthcare, but he was one of these guys that I reached out to soon after I started the podcast, and I asked if he'd come on, and I loved his response. And he didn't say no, he didn't say yes. He said, you know what, if you're still doing it in a year, reach out to me and I'm happy to come on. And his answer was so clear to me because it was, 90% of people start a podcast and then they fail, right? And then they drop it. So if you're going to be doing this for real, I'm happy to take you seriously. And I love that. And so what I did was every quarter I checked in with him. He was just like one of those OCD things in my mind that I decided I'm getting this guy on the podcast.
Nice.
And so like every quarter I check in with him. Hey, here are the last couple guests we had on. It's been really great, blah, blah, blah. I'll check in with you in the fall. I'll check in with you in the winter. And then a year later, I said, all right, here's the check-in. So it's been a year. And he did come on, and we got to talk about some of his books, and he had written a new book then. And anyway, so long-winded way of bringing up his book, but
I love your persistence, by the way. Like it's and it's like it's not just persistence, but it's like you're tracking it, and that's awesome. I admire that.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's persistence or OCD, but either way, it gets the job done.
It works. It works.
Yeah, it works. So he talks about switching your mindset around marketing, whereas I guess the old rules of marketing was you buy ads and you put ads places. And he kind of explains that an ad is like a very intrusive, almost interruptive sort of marketing, because I'm here to read the article that I came to read, or I'm here to watch the video that I came to watch. I didn't come to see your ad. And then when you force your ad on me, I'm just trying to get away from it. And so he kind of talks about, building value and building, creating a platform so that people are actually coming to you for the knowledge, and it's just a lot more organic. And it's something that seems to make a lot of sense to me. The example that he gives in the book is like a hotel, a boutique hotel. Instead of trying to put ads about your hotel, go put out content about things to do in the area, like nice places to see, things to do, and then naturally people will kind of come to you. So long-winded way of kind of just framing this conversation. I'm really curious. With all that being said, I personally have really not done very well or found a lot of success on the B2B marketing side. I find it to be still very, one-to-one, relationship to relationship. And so with all of that context for me, what is your kind of I guess let's start broad stroke. What's kind of your approach to marketing for healthcare?
Yeah, no, man, I appreciate that. It's not easy, to your point. It's possible. And I appreciate you, just being upfront about it. Is a challenge, and it's a challenge for a lot of folks. Look, I'm going to share this, and we're going to cover 3 pillars of marketing. It's going to be super jam-packed. So get your pencils ready. And if you're driving, you could always hit rewind on this one. But essentially, I'll tell you first why. Like I spent the first 17, 18 years of my career in a corporate job. I climbed the ladder, and to this day, Mendel, I remember the day my heart was pounding super fast. My palms were all sweaty, and I was about to do it, man. I was about to make the call to my boss, telling him I'm done. Like, I'm out. And I had climbed all the way up to VP at Medtronic. So grateful for the opportunities that they gave me. Just incredible. And long story short, man, I saw so many companies being at a large firm like that, very successful firm, fail. And the numbers are there, man. 50% of all companies fail after 5 years. 97% of all companies fail after 10 years. And the number one reason that they fail is lack of product demand. And the number two reason that they fail is lack of profitability. So I kept seeing these companies, man, like go through the drain. Some of them made it, which is great, but many of them didn't. And I said, damn, all these companies that are healthcare that are making a difference in lives, like, why should they fail? They shouldn't. The point is they should not fail. If you guys are running a healthcare company and you know that it's changing lives, you should not fail. So my mission went from climbing a corporate ladder to actually helping 5,000 companies in the health tech space succeed. And that's why we do what we do, man, because there's so many awesome people out there like you, Mendel, like all of your listeners that are building companies that could improve all of our lives. And so the why is strong for us. And I remember, just kind of chatting with my wife, dude, like before I made the call, like she knew, man, like she knew how frustrated I was, and much like the audience, they too are frustrated. They're frustrated with the red tape. They're frustrated maybe because their ideas get put on bookshelves that don't ever get access. They're frustrated because they're not moving fast enough. I was feeling all those things. She grabs my hand and says, let's do this, babe. Like, we're going to do this together. And first of all, having her support was so huge for me because we're in this together. And secondly, I knew that the future was going to be bright because the work that we're doing at Outcomes Rocket is all about the founder. And so that's our why, man. And really, like the three buckets, we could chat about them. And I want to take your lead on this one, but the three buckets, if anybody ever tries telling you that marketing is too complex, they're trying to sell you something, because it's either owned media, earned media, or paid media. Everything that you do marketing wise fits into one of those buckets.
Yeah, we'll definitely dig into that. But I got to rewind just a little bit to the actual phone call. So you have your wife's support, absolutely critical for anything to even have a chance of going well.
Yes.
You're nervous about making that phone call, but you make the call. How did the call go, and how did you feel after?
Man, as I said, like the call went well. But as I said, the organization I was with at Medtronic, big kudos to them. They're just extraordinary people. The response was, what are you looking for? We'll make it happen for you here. Like, where do you want to build? Because is it money? Is it a new angle? Is it a product line? Right. So the reception that I got was amazing. It was actually a reception of support. And it was really hard, man, because when you're with a company that long, you're like family, man. Like, you spend so much time working together, the tough quarters, the work that you do together. So essentially, the call concluded with, man, if you really want to do this, like, I get it. So let's make the transition smooth, and so luckily, I had a nice kind of base of people that were in place to kind of backfill. And so it was all about putting together that plan to backfill, make a smooth transition, and take the leap. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a really great environment. I want to touch on one more question about your transition out of that world. And that is that, whoever you were speaking to on the other line, it wasn't the sole owner of Medtronic, I'd have to imagine.
Right. No.
And what is that? I mean, it seems to say something so positive about, because, you're going to talk about value in marketing, but value, is a lens that I try to attach to everything. And when you talk about leadership, thinking of your people, not as employees, but as team members that you care about, and to be able to let somebody like you go with that kind of support and not think about, well, what about me, and how's this working to get picked up, and for your manager to have that kind of support and conversation, and not be, sometimes, and the reason why I'm saying that there were probably some, probably executive, but middle management, so to speak, is I think that it's so hard to create that culture at that level, because the CEO, they're typically somebody, I mean, you're in this position now, you're somebody that you want to care about your people. It's easy to care about your people. You look at them as your team, but I feel like it's difficult to create that at that next level. And so just kind of reflect on that for a minute.
Yeah.
How do you think, how do you think that culture was created so that at Medtronic, so that your manager had that kind of perspective?
Yeah, man, I'll tell you. So I will give big kudos to my manager. He's the VP of all of sales in the U.S., Blake Tatum, and the president of the organization, Frank Chan. Look, man, these guys, the team there, they really focus on 3 points of integration. And they do such an incredible job. Leadership starts at the top and it trickles to the bottom, right? And from the way you treat people to the way you operate. The 3 points of integration are cultural integration. Does this person fit the culture that we're building here? The second point of integration is operational integration. That the operational integration is about making sure that the individual, whether they be an individual contributor or a people leader, is contributing to the end goals and the strategy of the organization in a very clearly defined and measurable way. What are the metrics? What are the KPIs? Like, you always knew where you stood, black and white. Like, you always knew, right? You're either hitting a mark or you're not hitting the mark. And that operational integration was a very critical factor. And the third and final point of integration that really, I think I learned a lot of this from the leadership team there, was financial integration. So you got to make sure you have compensation plans that really complement the business's goals, but also the employee goals. And they did a masterful job of kind of doing all three. And I'm giving them a huge shout out. So Frank, Blake, the entire team over there, just incredible people. That they did a really nice job. It was hard to go, man. It was really hard to go.
Yeah. All right. So you made the leap of faith. You took the plunge, and you start Outcomes Rocket. So I guess, did you always have this 3-pillar philosophy? Let's start digging into the 3 pillars that you talk about, and maybe how you built them.
Yeah.
How you approach them.
We didn't always have them. They started coming out as we were testing things and, seeing what worked and what didn't. And really, like, dude, so in college, I was a history major.
Okay.
So I studied Greek and Roman civilization. I always have had this thirst for understanding how things work, philosophy. And if you're like, I mean, dude, if like these these professors that do philosophy, many of them came from mathematics. So like, what are you doing as a mathematics and like physics expert now going into human thought, ideas, and philosophy? Well, we all struggle for order. And I was struggling for order, man. Because dude, it's hard, right? Like, and traditionally I've done sales, but I've also worn marketing hats, and putting it all together, man, was a struggle. So I was kind of looking for answers. What is the philosophy that could be followed? What is the belief? And when you look at anything, man, like religion, or anything that seeks to give order to disorder, what it does, it distills it into very simple principles, values. And when we were kind of like, doing different programs, we started off as a podcast production agency, and have evolved to a full service marketing agency and started doing all these different things. How does it all make sense? How does it all integrate? Many people have heard the term omni-channel marketing, right?
Yep.
All that is saying, make sure it all talks to each other. And so little by little, we started coming up with, this kind of falls into this component of it's yours, and it's your website, and it's your podcast, and it's yours. So in the owned pillar, It's all the things that you own. So like your social media channels, your SEO, nobody could take that away from you, right? Like it's all yours. You're not renting it, it's yours. And within this field of owned, one of the most commonly missed golden opportunities is email. And many people will say email is dead. And that's a very one-sided thing to say. It's dead if you use it as a sole channel. But it's not dead if you're also using DM on social, if you're using a podcast, if you're using conferences, and if you're using the telephone. Once you start integrating your program, and this is all within owned, right? Like if you guys walk away from this podcast with Mendel and I, understanding that email alone, you're leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. If you're not driven by dollars, you're leaving thousands of patients without what you have to offer. And that's because you're not leveraging it well enough. What can you do to leverage it well enough? I'm going to give you one very simple thing that you could do today. And that is take a look at the customers you have worked with in the past and take a look at the customers you're working with today. If you don't have an email list, that's your email list. I start here because everybody has that, right? Like everybody has that. And then you start segmenting that list. Maybe it's a list of, I don't know. I mean, let's talk, Mendel, like let's use specifics here. Like, how many people would be on this list of current and past customers for you?
On the service side at Proviva, I don't know, let's call it 100.
Okay. So you got 100 in place. This 100 people can be segmented into, if you want to keep it very simple, don't over segment because then you're going to overcomplicate, but you could segment it into 2 or 3 segments. The segments are, they haven't worked with me for more than 6 months. They're working with me today. Let's just keep it that simple, right? Or maybe it's a year. You fill in the gap. Would it be a year or would it be 6 months?
Either way, could be 6 months.
Okay, 6 months. So what we're going to do is create a campaign, and that campaign is going to be a 4-part series to these amazing people that worked with you in the past, that know who you are. And I love this quote, second money is easier than first money. And dude, you've already worked with them, right? So re-engaging with them is going to be less of a lift. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's going to be less of a lift than it was engaging with somebody net new, because they know you. They've trusted you to do stuff for them. And if it went well, which I'm sure it did, knowing you, they're going to be like, oh, there's Mendel. I wonder what's going on with him, right? So it's a 4-part series to those that you haven't worked with in 6 to 12 months. Then it's a 4-part series with those you're working well. You probably have something that you haven't told them about that you do, right? Those you start a new services campaign or an updates campaign or a check-in campaign or a podcast campaign. By engaging that list of 100, I can tell you that within 2 to 3 months, you'll get at least one opportunity out of that.
Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense for kind of relationship maintenance, maybe relationship or client reacquisition or whatever you want to call it. But what about kind of cold? What about trying to expand to new people? So I did, and I think I talked to you about this. I may have, but I tried this thing for like 6 months where we did a whole campaign. We created various different, landing pages, and we created specific email campaigns, but it was targeting new clients. And I told the guys going in that I'll pay you, like this was our deal, literally. I'll pay you a bunch of money. And the metric of success is one new client, one. And if you can
Within
get
how much time?
What's that?
Within how much time?
6 months.
6 months? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, hell.
One client.
Okay.
Okay. I don't care how big.
Fair deal.
Yeah, I thought it was a fair deal. And I paid them, I think it was like 10 grand or something like that. And I said, if you can achieve that metric of success, great. Because to me, if whatever system you created can spit out one client, then it becomes a numbers game and you can spit out more, right? But if not. And if not, then I get my money back. Anyway, so long story short, I ended up getting my money back. And it wasn't due to lack of trying. We did a whole bunch of things. So we created different campaigns, and there was responses, and it was targeted, and like we did a whole bunch of things. But in healthcare specifically, I feel like it's very, very relationship based, and it's all about just direct people that I mean, I know because I get a million emails to my inbox, and unless I know you, and to your earlier point, then that makes a lot of sense to have that follow up. And unless I know you, I'm not reading this email. It's just click, like goodbye. So yeah, what's your how do you approach the cold open space?
Yeah, for sure. The best way to really approach the cold space is credibility. So really, man, I like to take advantage of this question right now, Mendel, to hit on earned media. And so there's nothing better than earned media to establish credibility with people that don't know you. So man, one of my favorite quotes, Bill Gates, if I was down to my last dollar, I'd spend it on PR. Why? Because he knows the power of, if you get a third party to tell your story for you, it's more credible than if it's coming out of the horse's mouth. Dude, it's dude, I'll tell you at home, right? Chatting with my wife, I could tell her something and it'll be like, okay. But if somebody else says it to her, it's like, oh yeah, no, for sure. That makes sense. And by the way, vice versa. She could tell me something, she's been telling me, you got to take these supplements and you got to do this. And then I go see a trainer and I'm like, hey babe, I'm doing these supplements. It's like, I literally have been telling you this for 3 years. And so it's the party of earned media. So what happens is, you're out there telling your story, but if you're doing things that have significant value, the story should be told. It's actually a lot simpler than you'd think. And so here is the takeaway. So if you're reaching out to all these people, the prep work before you do your cold is a combination of customer testimonials. So who have you helped, and have you asked them to do a testimonial that clearly outlines the benefits that you were able to deliver to them and continue to deliver to them? That's number one. If you have a base of customers that is currently happy with you, then do it. I know what a lot of you guys are thinking. You're thinking, I help health systems. There's too much red tape. They're not going to do it. I agree. That's a thing. But let me tell you guys a little secret. The secret is, while health systems may not want to give a thing out about, testimonials, the health system wants to have their leadership team be thought leaders. So that's why a podcast is a genius move. So, if you're running a podcast for your company, you're actually going to say, hey, so-and-so, I want to do a podcast with you, just showcasing the latest that health system's up to. You game? Of course you're game. You're hiring a PR firm to get you out there, and now you're going to be on the podcast and say, hey, by the way, what are you doing in this? You could tee up a question for them to talk about the great work that you guys are doing, not make a huge deal, and now you have your testimonial built in there, right? So you get your testimonials, and then the other thing you want to do is get your message out there. So you have a unique angle, you have lived experience, and the next thing you want to do is pitch it to a couple of outlets and get the word out there on what you're doing. I would tell you that you could, if you pitch it right, within 2 to 3 months, get a couple stories, call it 3 to 4 stories out there on you and your business. Hey, you just did it recently, right, Mendel? You were a front page of something. Tell me about that. I actually didn't get a chance to ask you about that.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, there's I think it's the largest Orthodox Jewish publication. So it's prints weekly. It's a physical kind of newsletter, a couple hundred pages, and then they have everything else. They have a business section, they have a family section, they have different sections. So awesome. Their business in the business section, they profile one entrepreneur every week, and they call it the lunch break, and it's like a 16-page article. So they they got in touch, and it was last week they put that out. It was a lot of fun.
Dude, that's awesome. Congratulations. Well, guess what, dude? You have this piece now, right?
Yeah.
And so you can do it, guys. Like Mendel's done it. If you have questions, ask him. If you have questions, we'll leave a way to get in touch with me and my team afterwards. But the thing is like once you compile, you should do cold even without that. Like don't let that stop you. But your success rate will improve exponentially if you have sources telling your story that include existing customers and the media. So then what you want to do is, I always say if a tree falls in the forest, you're not going to hear it unless you're close enough. So it's your job as the business owner or the marketing leader to put a megaphone on that earned media attention. And by the way, I'm talking about putting it at the bottom of your email signature, putting it on your sales proposals, putting it in your digital channels. Like, dude, you did a great job putting it on LinkedIn. Like that thing was all over the place. I'm still seeing it. and then you put it out there. That really, creates additional trust.
Yeah.
Because you're validated by a third party. And it really does help accelerate. Earned media will do this for you. It will reduce the cost of acquisition, and it will decrease your sales cycle. It doesn't happen overnight. You got to start now. So Mendel, I'm glad you got stuff coming out. And by the way, folks, I had an awesome interview with Mendel on my podcast. He crushed it, added tons of value to our listeners. That's another earned media, like get on people's podcasts, right? That's another OPS. We call OPS, other people's stages. So you get on other people's stages, boom. Like, I mean, they're telling stories about you. It's an opportunity. Leverage that to increase your sales cycle, and it will help your cold outreach be that much more successful.
Yeah. Yeah. Some great tips there. There's one more thing on cold that I want to get your thoughts on, because I think it's not 100% unique to healthcare, but it's almost a definite possibility in healthcare when you're trying to chase down a lead, which is that I feel like the decision-making in healthcare is so opaque. Like you never know. It could literally be, I mean, for us with services, let's just take Proviva Health Group, right? So we do chronic care management, remote patient monitoring, annual wellness visits, things like that. So it could be the VP of population health. It can be the CFO. It can be the CEO. It can be the doctor. And then what gets even worse is when it's not just that you have to find the one person who makes the decision and it's not clear, but it could be that the decision is split between 3 different stakeholders. So it could be the doctor and the office manager, who's typically also the doctor's wife, in which case you never know which day of the week who's actually calling the shots. It could be so many different people. So I feel like in other industries it's pretty clear. Like if I need to sell, cans of tuna fish, I go to the tuna fish buyer department and I just, sell it to them. It's a really random example, but but in healthcare, I feel like that. So how do you go about finding the right people to talk to? What's your suggestions?
Man, that's a really great question, Mendel, because it is, right? Like there's some very complex buyer groups. And the one thing that I'll say is a really nice and targeted account-based marketing plan can really help out with those kinds of things. Because, dude, if you leave all these contacts, and by the way, folks, AI is not going to help you here. Like, it's just not, right? Like, this is elbow grease. This is taking down good notes in your CRM. Like, I don't know what CRM you use, but HubSpot, Salesforce, they all have a version of account-based marketing where you put the company in and then the contacts within that company. If you don't have a CRM, get LinkedIn Sales Navigator, because you could create maps of an organization and type in your notes on kind of conversations that are happening there. The approach is essentially account-based marketing, and you start to get, if you really, and by the way, this is less scalable, right? So you're going to have to pick, I would even say, your top 5 targets. If you have a team of salespeople, then you could expand. But if you're the main one leading sales efforts at your company, you don't want to go beyond 5, because then it becomes too much. So because this is an investment of time, and by the way, folks, prospecting is investment, not returns. So guess what? You're not going to get paid right now, but you're making investments of time and intelligence. So you create this ABM, this account-based marketing map, and you take notes, and you're outreaching using multiple channels, and you're figuring out what the entry point is and what the best, like what their decision-making process is. And I promise you that out of those 5, you're going to really get clear on a couple of them, if not all of them. You'll get clear on a couple of them. You'll get hyper-focused. And then you say, all right, what are the next steps now that I know to get them to work with us? You know, the challenging part is a lot of these sales cycles are 6 to 12 months. So, like with these ABM campaigns, you're like fishing for whales. Right? You always want to make sure you're fishing for whales because you will hit them. But at the same time, you want to fish for tuna. So what are those smaller deals that you could bring into the boat with some quicker hits, right? And by the way, Mendel, like this is where the importance of thinking about your value ladder. So we have these discussions with clients all the time. You can't go from a conversation to a $2 million deal like all the time. It might happen here and there. So you got to ask yourself, if I have a value ladder, what am I giving away? What is $500? What is $20,000? What is $100,000? What is $2 million? Right? And so the way you get tuna into the boat is you add depth to your existing product line. And it could be as simple as a free podcast, dude. Like that's a really nice ad that you have it with the podcast, right? I have that too with the podcast. Hey man, engage with us. Love what you're doing. Come on with us. They buy into that. The fact that somebody says yes, they buy in. Now we're showcasing them. So we're leading with value, right? And they didn't have to pay for it. Then there's the next thing. It's a course. Or it's a done for you 3-day package. It might not exist yet, but make it up. But add value and get those tuna in the boat so that you could work your ABM campaigns while you're keeping cash flow going.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple things I kind of want to call out here, which is, first of all, you said this earlier, this isn't AI is not going to help you, sell elbow grease, but it's what I appreciate about you breaking it down, and we'll get to paid in a second, but what I appreciate you breaking down between owned, earned, and paid is that it also makes a difference at what stage you are at. So at the end of the day, the huge value of having like Saul, managing your marketing is that it's very clear from this conversation that this is what you live and breathe. You're extremely passionate about this, and this is what you do all day. And marketing is not one of those things that you can just like also wear a marketing hat if you actually want to do it really, really well. But at the same time, it costs a lot of money. I mean, if you're going to do it right and you're going to and you're going to have a proper, cohesive strategy, and I have no idea what you charge, but just typically for me being around the block for a little bit, these things cost money. And so if you're starting out, that's where you're going to have to focus in on more owned and more earned, and really put in the work and really be creative and spend the time. Yes, you're going to have to go to ChatGPT and create even if it's, and create a good prompt that might give you some ideas for content, which you will then have to actually go and do. ChatGPT is not going to do that for you. So you're going to have to take that list of ideas and go film those pieces of content and go write those articles and go, create those posts and be consistent with it and do that for a very, very long time. And so at the beginning, you kind of have to, it's like I see these videos on sometimes on like YouTube where it's like someone saying how you're not, if you want to live in a nice place, what is it? It's something along the lines of like, if you don't have the money to go buy nice stuff, then you just have to build the nice stuff for yourself.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And talking about that. So the more you have a budget for, the more you're going to be able to take that earned and owned things and be able to really catapult it, because you'll be able to partner with a good marketing partner. But if you don't have that, you don't have to. You not only you don't have to wait till you have a good budget, you can't wait till you have the budget. You just have to put in more and more and more work. You know.
I agree. I totally agree. And you know what, man? That's a really great point. Is that, let's just say you don't have too much of a budget. I think owned and earned is the place to start. You're spot on with that. And one of my favorite quotes actually came from I read it. I read this book, Peter Attia, Outlive. I'm almost done with it. It's about living healthier, longer health span. But he quotes Sun Tzu in The Art of War. He says, tactics are the noise that you hear before the battle is lost.
Say that again.
Tactics are the noise that you hear before the battle is lost.
Okay.
And the point here is, you could have a ton of budget and spend a ton of money, but if you start with tactics, you're still going to miss the boat. So the point is, no matter what your budget size is, you really have to be strategic about the objective that you're seeking to meet. So once you're clear on what your objective is, okay, so we're in the middle of Q3. Our objective is to grow revenue by X million or 1,000, whatever your number is, right? And so in order to do that, we need to have approximately 20 sales. In order to get to 20 sales, we need approximately 200 sales appointments. In order to get 200 sales appointments, we need 2,000 leads. And I have 3 months. So you're starting with that goal of the revenue that you need to bring in. And then you ask yourself, okay, this objective is literally what I'm after. So now let me put a strategy together to get there, you know? And if you start there, you're able to really have that North Star guide you in where you're going to invest your money and time. And here's what I'll say too, Mendel, and everybody listening is, one thing that I kind of like, an analogy that I kind of woke up to this year was marketing initiatives. You should treat them like you would one of your team members. What do I mean by that? Well, you expect your team, when you hire them, to show up for work. And you have metrics and KPIs for them. And very likely at the end of the year, you could measure what they contributed as part of the total output of the business, ROI. So you got to take a look at your marketing objectives, understand how much they're costing you, how many leads they're getting for you, what conversion you're getting from those leads, and ultimately, is it worth it? Because if it isn't, then you need to stop, or you need to tweak it in a way that, you know, it becomes something that helps you grow. And so I like the idea of having that expectation of your marketing, because guess what? If an employee shows late to work every day, you're going to start having a performance conversation with them.
Right.
We got to start having performance conversations with our marketing programs.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And, you know, one more thing that I wanted to call out, it's just the fact that you practice what you preach clearly with it, which I think is really great. When I was doing marketing two and a half lifetimes ago, something that I noticed a lot of people in marketing are guilty of, and I was guilty of myself, is not doing the thing that they supposedly do for other people. So it's like, hey, I build websites for you, and my website is garbage because whatever. I'm busy trying to get clients myself, so I don't have time or budget for it. And so the fact that you yourself have a podcast, and I just want to, like, you know, because just the way that's we talk, you know, we're very transparent, and Saul,
yeah.
You're a very transparent person, and I just want our listeners to know, like, this is happening right now, meaning, you're coming on my podcast. I had the opportunity to come on your podcast, but we're having an hour-long conversation about marketing tactics. It's an opportunity for me to ask you questions. And this isn't some sort of trick. Like, what's happening right now is we're having a valuable conversation. I'm asking you questions. And you know what? At the end of the day, when I think of marketing or a potential partner, I'm very, very much going to think sell now. It's not a trick that you're doing that you're doing by having me on a conversation to hope to trick me into really selling me something. That's not what's happening. The real sales, and I think this is maybe what we started the conversation with about value, is that selling, at least to me, selling to me is about just finding organic value. And then the sale is obvious. It's not something that has to be forced. All these people with their fancy sales books and all the right responses and all the, when you hear this objection, you pull out this from the book and you do this. You know what? It's annoying. It's annoying. Even when like when it's done to you and it's very obvious, it's annoying as hell. Even if the guy does it well, meaning I've had it done to me before where it's like, all right, I need to think about this. And it's like, well, what exactly do you need to think about? Did I not give you the right information? What more information could I give you in order for you to have the right information? Okay, let's imagine the price was not, it's annoying. Okay. If the value is obvious, we wouldn't be here. Right. So I just want to call out that, like, that's exactly what's happening right now. We're having this mutual, this valuable conversation, and I encourage everybody to go do that. But back to my original thing. When did you decide to actually get on the bandwagon of starting your own podcast? And was that important to you from the outset? Like, how did you kind of?
Oh man, yeah, no, I love the question, Mendel, and you know what? It was when. I'm going to give a long story short to you. I've always been a fan of communications. And in college, I started as communications, shifted to history because there was so much rich content in the Greek texts of Aristotle, the Aristotelian appeals, Cicero, and his Captatio Benevolente, like all of these things, dude, super interesting stuff. And I had this like last semester in Luxembourg, and I had a camcorder, and my goal was to go and interview business leaders, but I ended up just going to different countries and partying. I didn't do anything. And so I always had this like thing behind, like, unfinished business. I do really bad with that. Like if it's not done, I want to finish. So I said, there's something here. And I've got to figure it out. Well, 7 years ago, I said, it's a podcast. Like it was kind of like coming up. And one of the things that I'll share with everyone that I share with my team all the time is the 4 M's. The 4 M's are model, mimic, master, and multiply. Anything in life, whether it's personal life or business, it's likely that somebody else has, and if not, done it. But if not, they haven't done it. There's a parallel of some sort. Unless you're like Elon Musk, that guy's like doing some crazy stuff that you've never seen. By the way, I want to see him on your podcast. You already got freaking Mark Cuban on, so I'm excited for the Elon Musk podcast on your show.
Yeah, unfortunately, Mark isn't exactly the best path to Elon. So.
Hey, but I'm saying I know you'll get them. And so look, man, so going down that path, I found out at the time, there's this guy, John Lee Dumas. He was doing massive podcasts. So I found out he had this book and he was doing like a Kickstarter campaign. I threw 10 grand down and I said, I'm going to go learn from this guy. I spent 2 days with him in Puerto Rico, still friends with him to this day. For those of you that know John, like 7 days a week doing a podcast, he was just like crazy. Well, I studied with him, learned kind of from his playbook, and I left his house with energy and a plan. Model, mimic, and 1,700 episodes in, I've mastered it. And now I'm multiplying it through all of our clients that we do it for. So like anything that you want to do in life or in business or in marketing, it's there, and it's the 4 M's. And so now, I feel a great sense of responsibility doing this as part of our mission to help 5,000 plus companies succeed in healthcare technology, we get to showcase them. Our newest version of the podcast is Founder Stories. And you know, the one that I did with you, Mendel, when we launched it, is a founder story, because it's not just about healthcare innovation. It's actually about the people that are pushing the envelope, the stories of the people doing it, like Mendel, like you who are listening and watching this. Like, we're the ones that push the envelope. And the purpose of the podcast now is not just to showcase these leaders that we're on a mission to help succeed, but it's to encourage those that haven't taken the leap yet. We want you to feel inspired by the work that we're doing, because we need all the help we can get. You know, 18% GDP, $4.7 trillion, the value's not there. So we need the innovation.
Yeah, love it. All right. Well, I can't believe how fast time has flown. Saul, give us some parting words and where everyone can find you.
Yeah, no, hey, really appreciate the opportunity, Mendel. Like, really, I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for our friendship, our partnership, and you know, can't thank you enough for having us on. And thank you all for listening to our time together. Look, the best thing you could do is, there was a time where I actually was carrying the bag. I was a sales rep. I was selling spinal implants, and I had been calling on this surgeon for over a year. And I didn't know if he was ever going to work with me. But then the day came when he called me and he said, "Saul, I'm ready. Come over here next week. I got a surgery for you." You never know when that time is going to come. But that time will come for you. And the best thing that you could do is be ready. That time will come to you, and the best thing you could do is be ready. So how do you get ready? You learn from the podcast that Mendel and I just did, owned, earned, and paid. We could cover paid another time. But also remember the 4 M's. Model, mimic, master, multiply. Because by doing those, you'll be able to crush it. If you want to model the stuff that we're doing at Outcomes Rocket to help customers succeed, I invite you all, if you're doing at least $1 million in revenue or have raised $5 million or more, you could go to outcomesrocket.com/grow. We have a free 20-minute get more customers call. If you like something that we talked about today, we'll help you unpack that and form a nice blueprint strategy, no cost. Our way of just connecting with y'all and exploring ways to work with amazing people that are looking for that growth that we could create together. So I'll leave you with that.
Love it. Yeah. The only thing I'm gonna add to that is that although the time will come, like it happened with you with the spine surgeon, it will never come. It will come if you're showing up every day, and if you're trying to be ready, but it'll never come if you don't. And so, you know, you'll never have that opportunity if you're not showing up and you're not continuously making those phone calls or you're not continuously putting out that content. So just to add that, besides for the Outcomes Rocket website, definitely follow Saul on LinkedIn. Puts out a lot of really great content. He has his own podcast, like we mentioned. I had the pleasure and honor of being on there last week or 2 weeks ago. And so yeah, check LinkedIn. Saul, thank you for spending time. This was awesome.
It's my pleasure, Mendel. Thanks.